Will Robinson here from Robinson's Auto, toolsandtime.com. Welcome back, guys. Today in the shop we have a 2006 GMC Envoy. We're going to take it for a ride. There's a rumbling sound coming from the front. Notice when I turn hard to the left. It gets louder. Sounds like I got a noise coming from both sides. Some of it may be tire noise. Sure sounds like the right front. Passenger side. Now, the tires are choppy, so we are hearing some road noise, like I suspected. However, we do have a wheel bearing starting to rumble. But what I did find is, as soon as I jacked it up, first thing I do is check to see if I have any visual movement or any kind of feeling of play. And as you can see right here, but that's not the wheel bearing, that's the outer tie rod. And I'll give you a shot once we get in there. The outer tie rod shot. I'm not feeling any play in the wheel bearing. It feels a little tight. I hear noise, but that could be the brake pads rubbing. So I'm going to have to remove the wheel, remove the brake pads, and just see if I can feel anything different. Same thing over here. If you take a look, the tires are choppy. You can see how the tire here drops down, higher, drops, higher, chop. It's all choppy. That's going to give you some noise. That's due to most likely a bad shock in the front here. Unless this tire was on the back, I'm not sure if it was ever rotated. But, that's definitely an indication of a bad shock. When I take and I spin, I don't have any play on this side. However, when I spin it, I hear what sounds like a dry bearing. More so on this side than the other side. So this may be a case where we have a bearing starting to go on each side, and we may have to eventually move over here if we don't find nothing. That's one of the noises that he's hearing, so we'll be taking care of that as well. However, to get a better feel of this wheel bearing, I'm going to take and remove the caliper. Now we can take and remove it in two separate pieces. However, looks like somebody was just here and put brakes on it not all too long ago, so the brakes are fine. Feels like the caliper is floating. So I'm going to just take and remove the caliper bracket bolts in the back of the caliper and remove everything as one piece. Then I'll be able to take the rotor off. Okay, next, if you come in here behind the caliper, you'll see you'll have one 18mm bolt on the bottom and another one on the top. We're going to take and remove them next. Wow, that's tough. Wow. If you have a lip on your rotor, it's going to be hard to remove the caliper and pads out. So sometimes if you just take and you pull on the caliper, as long as the pins and everything are free, you'll feel the caliper start compressing as far as the piston, and then that'll open up the gap in between the pads and the rotor. However, if that doesn't work for you, get a screwdriver, just catch the edge of that rotor like so, and pry. As you see, it starts compressing it. At this point, I should be able to take and remove everything as one assembly. What you don't want is the weight of that caliper hanging on the brake hose, so a bungee cord works good for this application. Remove the rotor. Let's see if that'll stay there. Okay, I am feeling a little roughness to that bearing. I hear that dry bearing noise as well. Yeah, I think this is a case where it's just starting to fail, because there's no play that I could feel evident. We're going to go ahead and replace this wheel bearing just because of that dry sound that I'm hearing from it. But I'm also hearing it from the other side. And the symptoms I was having when I was putting more load onto this side of this wheel bearing, it's the one that kept on showing up the most. Alright, if you follow this ABS wire, it comes around, goes through these retainers, and then plugs in up here. So we're going to take and pop all these retainers off, unplug it, start unfishing everything. Then we're going to remove the axle nut. Then we'll turn and try to gain access to the retaining bolts on the back side of the spindle. Just as a quick shot, these retaining clips are relatively simple. Open up. This one here you can take and pop out through its bracket. See, I got another one in the back. This one you can just unplug it from there. That's the ABS wire. Disconnect it. What I'm picking up on here, guys, I'm not sure if this is part of the cause or not for potentially both wheel bearings making noise. The ball joints have been replaced. This axle nut is also showing signs that a socket's been on it recently. So if they remove this spindle per se to put the ball joints in it and whatnot and remove the axle nut, if they didn't torque this to the correct specs, or sometimes just disturbing them will cause this to happen. But if they just simply tighten it up without torquing it, messed up the preload on the wheel bearing, that could be why we're failing both. Okay, now I just took and turned the wheel all the way to the right, pushed in on the axle. If you come around the back, you'll see the retaining bolts that hold that wheel hub assembly in. 18 millimeter, we're going to take and zip them out. You can see I'm using a swivel. Alright, with the wheel turned all the way to the left, the socket actually interfered with the tie rod. So, I mean, we could have separated the tie rod, we'll be replacing it anyhow. However, if you don't have to, I just wanted to demonstrate just the wheel bearing hub assembly. Okay, these could be a little tight coming out. However, if you use an air hammer, oh, there you go. There's a shot without the air hammer. I was going to give you a shot with the air hammer because I did not expect that to come out that easy, to be honest with you. Give it a whack like I showed you there, popped right out. However, if you have to get behind it with an air hammer or a chisel, find a spot that you can clean up easily. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's got that dry, barren feel to it. So it's definitely not a good thing. However, I don't believe it was all of our noise. Because like what I'm expecting is that these wheel bearings were over torqued and too much preload was added to them. So I think we're going to be replacing the other side as well. Next one I'm going to do is take a flap wheel. You can use a wire wheel or whatever you have. Get in there and clean all this rust out of this inner perimeter where the new bearing assembly is going to seat in place. Okay, I got it cleaned up for the most part. Got the new wheel bearing assembly here. I want to dry fit it first to make sure what I do have clean is efficient. Everything slides together well. I think we got it. Now that we got the spindle cleaned up as good as I could get it, it's mainly the surface that you got to worry the most about because that's what it's going to be pulling up against. But you want to make it so it pulls in nice and true. However, before I take and put the spindle on, I got a pretty straight shot at removing this tie rod, and then I don't have to be climbing in and out of the vehicle to turn the wheel. First I'm going to take and break it loose back here. I'm just going to simply break it loose. I'm not going to move the nut too much. Break it right off the seat a little bit. This way, if it's the same exact length of the other one, we could just match it up. However, if it isn't, at least we have something to measure off of. This is like a 21 millimeter. Now what you can do with these, you don't want to do this if you have aluminum spindles. However, these casted ones are okay. Especially if you don't want to, if you don't have to, say if you're taking the front spindle off and the tie rod's still good, if you use a pickle fork or something, you're going to just tear that boot, no doubt. So what you do, you give it a couple good whacks right on this surface, and that vibration alone most times will break that tie rod loose. And it doesn't take much. Yeah, as you can see, I can't break that one loose, so I'm going to have to hold this back here. The inner tie rod is pretty much a ball socket, and as you can see, it spins pretty freely on the inside. So what I'm going to do, I'm trying to break that loose. I'm going to simply put this back up in place. Because I have no way to really hold it, but this has a spot where you can grab it with a wrench. So essentially, this here is going to keep your tie rod from spinning. Now we can try to break it loose in the back, just like so. Screw it out. From the face of this nut, from the outer face to the center of this tie rod end, find center, and that's the exact length where you're going to want to set your new tie rod, and we'll worry about that later. I'm going to take and put a little never seize around the inner perimeter, or you could simply apply it to the wheel bearing assembly itself. But what I don't want is anything on the face, because I actually want these surfaces to be pretty true. Instead of spreading all the way around and painting it on, just put a pretty good amount right on the tip, and as it slides in, it'll lube the rest of the shaft. That's not terrible. Alright, so definitely don't want to forget your shield. It's like a form of protection. You don't want to slip the shaft in without making sure you're protected. Because then we have to pull it back out and start all over again. I'm going to take the wire wheel and just hit that real quick. One time that I truly wear safety glasses, no matter what, is when I'm working with the wire wheel. Push that through like so. This will go in here like that. Simply make sure everything's sliding together nicely. I'm just going to reach behind and start the retaining bolts in by hand. I'm going to tighten these down to where I feel it's good. However, I will leave a torque spec here for you. I think you can get in there pretty well. Change that. Alright, I'm going to choose to use the original retaining clips just so I don't have to mess with them. Push it up and around. Yeah, like so. Put that one in. Now as far as the axle nut, we're going to definitely torque that. Run it down close with a ratchet. Okay, so I'm touching now, but we're going to have to at least put the brakes in and have someone hold the brakes for me while I torque it. I guess we'll finish putting the tie rod on. Get that out of the way. Alright, so what I'm finding here, so I'm about 11 inches on center. You know, not exactly. The vehicle's going to need alignment no matter how I look at it or how I try to sell it to them. I'm going to tell them it needs alignment no matter how close it is. And this one's pretty close to 11 inches on center as well. But it didn't come with a new nut. It kind of sucks. So what I'm going to do is, since it's pretty close in length, you see I'm about 1 3/8 to the face. So I'm just going to put it 1 3/8, get it close, and go from there. Yeah, it's about 1 3/8 there. Another thing I can see here and what I should have did, just came off the face of that nut to the center, which was about 9.5. I just didn't demonstrate it, but I did take that measurement and it came out to be about 9.5 from the face. You can see where the face of that nut was. The face of that nut. I mean, it appears it could go a little bit more, but it's pretty damn close. Alright, let me put the Zerk fitting in. Okay, just feel a little nervous. He's on there as well. We're going to try to keep that location of that nut. Hope it doesn't turn on its own. So you can tighten this baby down. And now we're just gonna, I gotta go about a half a turn, or not a half a turn, a half of castle division there, whatever you want to call that. Okay. Yeah, perfect. Let's take and fold this over like so. And just trim that back one and fold it down. Just like that. I'm going to lock this nut in place. Alright, now we're going to put the rotor on. As you can see, this one's been replaced and whatnot. However, always make sure this inner surface is clean. If it has a lot of rust buildup, clean it off. If there's any chance of flaking, get the flakes removed. Because what happens is if a piece of rust gets caught behind the rotor and the face of this, it'll throw everything out of balance, essentially. Another good practice, if you plan on doing brakes again on it, let's put a little bit of, just a little bit, sparingly, around that perimeter right there, because it's right where it always runs. I think it's Caliper. Click. Okay, pump up the brakes. Feel good?
Yeah.
Hold it down. Okay, 103 foot-pounds. Okay, that's all it calls for, guys. So once it clicks, leave it alone. If you take and you run them down too tight, past the torque specs, that's when you end up with what you've seen. Got it?
Yep.
Nice and tight now. No more tie rod slop. Okay, well with that being said, you guys seen what I had to deal with. It's going to be the same exact process on the other side. I'm going to call up the customer. I believe we're going to just go ahead and do it while I have it up in the air. 6 to 1, half dozen the other. I believe the preload got disturbed on these bearings, and that's why we're here now replacing them. Using the tools that I showed you earlier. The swivel 18mm is a must. Impact socket if you want to do this relatively quickly. However, same thing on this side. This one's even worse. So feels about the same as the other one, but the other one isn't quite as noisy yet. So something had to go wrong. Recently replaced, and this axle nut was taken off once before as well. And just the weather around here, erosion and whatnot, who knows. And it is what it is. So is that why the wheel bearings are both making noises? They're both rumbling. It's a very good possibility. In my opinion, that's what I keep on feeling. That's what I keep leaning towards. And then that extra preload just wore them out. Shortened its lifespan, to say the least. Alright guys, thanks for staying tuned. Have a good one. Okay, we just finished up replacing both front wheel bearings. It's getting pretty late. Just want to give you a quick demonstration. It's nice and quiet now. No matter which way we turn it. Front end feels much tighter with that outer tie rod replaced as well.